We tend to think of finance as this world of cold, hard numbers, completely separate from human stuff like, well-being and happiness. But what if they're actually deeply connected? Okay, let's dive into this explainer about the economist who was trying to bridge that exact gap.
This one sentence, this is really at the heart of our whole story. It's this belief that behind every single financial statement, behind every business decision, there has to be something deeper, a human purpose. Because without that, the numbers are just empty. So every big journey starts with a moment of questioning, right? Well, for the hero of our story, that moment came from deep inside the world of finance itself. Let's meet him.
Okay, on one hand, you've got the stereotype of an accountant, right? Just totally focused on financial reports, maximizing profit, all about the numbers. But then you have Dr. Shait Saban, who saw himself as, well, an atypical accountant. With his much broader background, he started asking a question that most people in his field just weren't asking. Hey, what about well-being?
I mean, think about it. He'd spent years deep in the trenches of accounting and finance. By all measures, he was successful. But something just kept nagging at him, this feeling that the traditional model was incomplete. The spreadsheets just weren't telling the whole story.
And this was his big light bulb moment. That old-school business mentality, the idea that profit is the only thing that matters, he realized it was becoming obsolete. It just wasn't sustainable anymore, not even from a pure business perspective.
So what do you do when you have that kind of professional crisis? Well, Dr. Saban channeled all of that uncertainty into this pioneering academic journey. He decided he was going to formally study the very thing he felt was missing from the whole equation.
And during his doctoral research, he came up with this really powerful new concept, corporate happiness responsibility, or CHR for short. His argument is that, hey, just like companies are responsible for their impact on the environment, they're also responsible for their impact on human happiness.
And this idea, it isn't just for corporations. It actually mirrors a huge global shift. For decades, right, we measured how well a country was doing with GDP, just pure economic output. But now, there's this growing movement toward GNH, or gross national happiness. And the argument is pretty simple. What good is a rich country if all its citizens are miserable? True prosperity has to include well-being. But his research pushes this even further. It asks, okay, so whose happiness are we actually measuring here? And the answer has to be holistic. It's not just about keeping employees happy with a few perks. No, it's about the well-being of every single person involved, the customers, the suppliers, the shareholders, and yeah, the whole community.
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, doesn't it? But when a company actually tries to invest in happiness, it often hits this massive roadblock, a fundamental conflict of interest, right at the very top.
Dr. Saban explains this roadblock using a classic economic theory called the agency problem. In really simple terms, it's what happens when the people running the company, the managers, want totally different things than the people who actually own the company, the shareholders.
This conflict creates what you could call happiness standoff. Here's how it usually goes down. Step 1. The shareholders, they often want long-term sustainable value, and they get that happy employees and happy customers can create that. But step 2, the managers, they're typically judged on short-term results, like this quarter's cash flow. They want to avoid any risky investments that are hard to measure. So what's the result? These amazing ideas about well-being just get stuck in limbo, completely killed by this internal conflict.
So, if the managers and the shareholders are locked in a standoff, who can possibly break the tie? Well, Dr. Saban's research points to another incredibly powerful group, one whose opinion can literally force a company to act, the customer. And to figure this out, he didn't just sit around and theorize, no. He went out and gathered the data. He surveyed 1,500 people all across the UK and the US to ask a really simple question. Do customers actually care if a company is good? And wow, the results were fascinating. It wasn't just that customers were willing to reward companies that promoted well-being. The much stronger finding was that they were super eager to punish companies that were seen as harming it. When you look at the data, you see this crazy imbalance. The reward for being a good company is a moderate little bump, but the punishment for being a bad one, it's a massive drop. What this tells us is that for companies, the fear of losing customers is a way bigger motivator than the hope of maybe gaining a few new ones.
So this whole journey, from an accountant's gut feeling all the way to hard data, brings Dr. Saban full circle. He came back not just with a theory, but with actual evidence he could use to persuade the business world that, hey, happiness isn't just a nice-to-have, it's a strategic necessity.
And his ideas are more relevant today than ever before, thanks to this huge cultural shift, especially with the younger generation. Gen Z isn't just asking for these things, they're demanding them. They're not looking for a job, they want to manage a whole life. They are completely rewriting the rules of what it even means to be successful. And, this whole journey didn't just change his professional focus, it totally transformed him personally. As he puts it, you can't really argue for the importance of well-being in a boardroom if you're not applying those same principles to your own life. The research basically became a mirror.
And that personal transformation flowed right into his passion for teaching. He started to see his own students as another key group of stakeholders. He began thinking about their stress, their well-being, and how he could create a learning environment that was actually supportive, not just demanding.
And the impact of this whole philosophy is so clear. You can see it right here in a review from one of his students. It's not just about being smart or knowing the material, it's about creating a positive human connection. That's the real return on investment.
So, at the end of the day, this entire journey, from spreadsheets to souls, it really reveals one huge thing. We've had it all backwards. The goal isn't to get better at making money. The goal is to use our knowledge of money to make humanity better.
And that leaves us with one last question to really think about. It's easy to measure profit, right? But what if we actually tried to measure what truly matters? What would that look like for you in your life?